The vast halls of Valoria's palace glimmered with blue crystals and silver metal, but for David Carter, the place felt as cold as space itself. As a human ambassador, he knew his arrival was not welcome. The alien princess, Syra, sat on her high throne, her eyes sharp and unreadable. All around, alien nobles whispered and glared, their expressions filled with suspicion and even open dislike. David walked slowly down the long carpet, feeling every stare. He was here to make peace between humans and Valorians after years of misunderstandings. The peace treaty was important for both worlds, but he could sense that nobody wanted him here, especially not Princess Syra. Syra stood, tall and commanding, her armor shining in the bright light. Her voice echoed across the hall. "Welcome, Ambassador Carter," she said, though her words sounded empty. "We hope your stay will be educational." Her tone made it clear she did not respect him. The nobles snickered. David forced a polite smile. He remembered the reports. Syra hated humans because, years ago, a human leader had broken an alliance with her family. Since then, she distrusted all humans. David had read about her fierce intelligence and sharp tongue, but standing before her, he realized she was even stronger than the story said. The queen, Syra's mother, tried to ease the tension. "Ambassador, you are our guest. Please, join us at tonight's banquet." David bowed, thanking her, but Syra's glare made him nervous. That night, the banquet hall was alive with music and laughter, but David felt out of place. The food was strange, the customs confusing. When he sat down, Syra addressed him loudly. "Ambassador, do humans solve riddles, or do you just fight your problems away?" The hall fell silent. David could feel the pressure. He was being tested. She gave him a riddle about the stars, hoping he would fail. David took a deep breath, thinking carefully. He answered with honesty and humility, admitting when he did not know, and making the nobles laugh with a clever joke about human confusion. The laughter changed. Some nobles nodded in approval. Syra's eyes narrowed. She was not expecting him to handle the test so well. David realized he had to earn their respect, not demand it. He listened, learned, and spoke kindly. Still, he saw Syra's hatred burning, and he knew winning her trust would be his greatest challenge. As the night ended, David walked alone through the palace garden. He looked up at the alien sky, full of strange stars, and wondered if he could ever turn an enemy into an ally. Somewhere inside the palace, Syra watched him from the shadows, already planning her next challenge for the unwelcome guest. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Valoria's grand hall. Today was the day of the royal banquet, a gathering where nobles and guests from many worlds came to show respect to the royal family. David Carter, the human ambassador, stood quietly by the wall, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes on him. Princess Syra, in her elegant silver robe, moved with grace across the room. Her expression was cold and sharp. She had not forgotten the way David had embarrassed her with his clever answers the night before. To her, he was still just a human, weak and unworthy. When the banquet began, Syra decided to make David the center of attention again. She raised her hand, and the chatter stopped. "Ambassador Carter," she said, her voice clear and loud, "tell us, how does a human solve a problem when words fail?" David felt every gaze fixed on him. He knew this was a test to see if he would lose his temper or stumble. He smiled calmly and said, "We listen first. Then we think carefully. And when we act, we do so with respect." The nobles whispered among themselves, surprised by his answer. But Syra was not done. She stood and walked toward him, her eyes burning. "Then tell me this," she challenged. "If your own people turned their backs on you, how would you respond?" David's heart beat faster. He knew she meant the old betrayal of her family by humans. He looked her in the eyes and said, "I would seek to understand why. And then I would work harder to make things right." The room was quiet. Zyra's challenge had been met with honesty, not anger. Yet she could see some respect forming among the nobles for David. This irritated her more than she wanted to admit. After the banquet, some nobles approached David. They asked about Earth and human ways. David answered with patience and kindness. Even some of Zyra's own guards nodded their approval. But Sarah stayed distant, her pride keeping her cold. That evening, in her private chambers, Zyra stared at a hologram of Earth. She remembered the pain caused by humans' past betrayal. Yet, she also felt something new, curiosity. David's words stayed with her. Could a human really be different? Still, she would not show any weakness. The throne was hers, and she must protect her people from outsiders, no matter how polite. Tomorrow, she planned to challenge David even more. The game between them had just begun. The day after the banquet, the palace buzzed with excitement and whispers. The queen had made an announcement that surprised everyone. David Carter, the human ambassador, would face the traditional Valorian trial. It was a challenge given only to those seeking true honor, an ancient test to prove courage, wisdom, and heart. Zyra watched from her high balcony, her eyes cold but curious. The trial was a journey into the crystal wilds, a dangerous forest filled with strange creatures and shimmering crystals. At its heart bloomed the rare Luminara flower, a symbol of peace and purity. Only those with noble intentions could find and return with it. David listened carefully as the queen's advisor explained the trial. Many have tried and failed, the advisor said. It is not only a test of strength, but of spirit. If you succeed, you will earn the respect of Valoria. David felt the eyes of the entire court on him. Some nobles whispered that the human would never survive the wilds. Zyra herself hoped he would fail. To her, humans were weak, soft creatures, unfit for Valoria's throne or honor. That evening, David prepared his gear with the help of the Valorian guides. He studied the maps and listened to their stories about the dangers lurking in the forest, wild beasts, shifting crystals that could trap the unwary, and poisonous plants. Before leaving, David sought out Zyra. He found her in a quiet courtyard, staring at the stars. "Princess," he said gently, "I know you doubt me, but I want to prove my respect for your people." Zyra turned, her eyes sharp but unreadable. "Respect is earned, human, not given lightly." Her voice was firm. "Do not fail." David nodded. "I won't." The next morning, David entered the crystal wilds alone. The forest shimmered with strange light, and every sound was strange and new. He moved carefully, aware of the dangers described to him. Hours passed. David climbed rocky hills, crossed sparkling streams, and avoided hidden traps. When a wild beast appeared, he did not fight but stayed calm, using his knowledge and patience to avoid conflict. Meanwhile, unknown to David, Zyra followed quietly at a distance. Though she would never admit it, she worried for his safety. Watching him struggle, she felt a strange respect growing. This human was not like the others. Finally, after a long search, David spotted the Luminara flower glowing softly in a hidden clearing. It was more beautiful than he imagined. Carefully, he picked the flower, honoring its significance. As David prepared to return, the wild beasts returned, more aggressive this time. David stood his ground, but when a beast lunged, Zyra suddenly appeared, her weapon flashing. Together, they fought the danger and survived. Breathing hard, David looked at Zyra. "Thank you." She nodded, a small sign of respect. "Do not thank me yet. The trial is not over." They returned to the palace, the rare flower in hand, and a new understanding growing between them. The crystal wilds were alive with strange sounds, the whisper of the glowing leaves, the distant calls of unseen creatures, and the soft crunch of footsteps on crystal-studded soil. David moved carefully, clutching the rare Luminara flower he had found after hours of searching. His heart pounded, but his mind was focused on returning to the palace and proving himself. Suddenly, from the shadows, A pair of wild beasts leaped out. Their eyes glowed red, and their teeth flashed sharp in the dim light. David's breath caught. He reached for his weapon, but the beasts were faster. They closed in quickly, growling low and fierce. David held his ground, raising his small energy blade. The beasts snarled, circling him. He moved slowly, trying to keep calm, but the odds were against him. Just as one beast lunged, a silver flash cut through the air. A figure stepped between David and the creatures. It was Tyra, the alien princess, her armor shining like a star. She swung her weapon with precise skill, driving the beasts back. Together, Tyra and David fought side by side. Their movements synchronized without words, a strange but powerful team. The beasts finally fled into the forest, leaving the clearing quiet once again. David looked at Tyra, breathing heavily. "You saved my life." Tyra's expression was hard to read. "I could not let you die in my forest. You carry something important for Valoria." David nodded, feeling the new respect for the princess. She had always seemed distant, even cold, but here she was risking herself to protect him. It changed how he saw her. They sat by a small crystal stream, the soft glow of the Luminara flower between them. David spoke first. "I did not expect you to follow me." Tyra shrugged, looking away. "I wanted to see if you truly had courage. Most outsiders do not." David smiled faintly. "I want to prove that humans can be trusted." Tyra's eyes met his. For a moment, her hatred softened. "Perhaps you are different." As the sun began to set, they made their way back toward the palace. The journey was quiet but full of unspoken thoughts. When they arrived, the palace guards stared in surprise. No one had ever returned from the Crystal Wilds with the Luminara flower before, and no human had ever survived it. Whispers of the unlikely partnership between the princess and the human spread quickly. In her chambers later, Tyra studied the flower. It was a symbol of peace and hope. She thought about David's bravery and kindness. Though she still had doubts, a small part of her wondered if the human ambassador might be the ally Valoria needed. But the path ahead was uncertain. The court was watching, and many did not want a human so close to power. Tyra would have to choose her next move carefully. For now, she decided to keep her feelings hidden and prepare for the challenges that were sure to come. The palace was quiet after the trial, but inside, both David and Tyra felt a change growing between them. The rare Luminara flower sat in a crystal vase, glowing softly in the royal chambers. It was a sign that something new was beginning, but old wounds still ran deep. David could not stop thinking about the past. The betrayal that had caused so much pain to Tyra's family was real. A human leader had broken a promise, hurting many Valorians. Yet David knew he was different. He wanted to build trust, not break it. One afternoon, David asked Tyra to meet him in the palace garden. The bright flowers and green trees were a sharp contrast to the cold halls inside. Tyra arrived, her face unreadable, but her eyes curious. "I want to understand," David said quietly. "Why do you hate humans so much?" Tyra looked down, her voice soft but firm. "My family trusted your people once. They believed in peace, but humans betrayed us. My parents lost everything because of that." David nodded. "I am sorry for what happened, but I have lost people too. Friends and family caught in wars caused by mistrust. I want to make things right." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then Tyra spoke again. "How can I trust you? How do I know you are not like the others?" David reached out his hand. "I cannot change the past, but I promise to work for a future where Valoria and Earth stand together." Tyra studied his hand, then slowly took it. It was a small gesture, but powerful. It was the first step towards something new. Over the next days, David and Tyra spent more time together. They shared stories about their worlds, their hopes and fears. David learned about Valoria's history and culture, and Thyra saw the strength and kindness in the human ambassador. The court noticed the change too. Some nobles whispered with surprise, others with suspicion, but none could deny that David had passed the trial and that Thyra's feelings were shifting. Still, Thyra kept her guard. The pain of betrayal was deep, and she knew trusting a human was dangerous. But maybe, just maybe, David was the one who could help heal old wounds. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, Thyra stood on her balcony, looking out at the stars. She thought of David and the promise he had made. A new hope grew in her heart, a hope that the future could be different. But in the shadows, unseen eyes watched. Not everyone in the court welcomed change. There were those who feared the alliance and planned to keep the old hatred alive. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, Thyra felt ready to face it, not alone, but with David by her side. The halls of Valoria's palace buzzed with quiet excitement. News had spread quickly. David Carter, the human ambassador, had returned from the Crystal Wilds alive and victorious, carrying the rare Luminera flower. No outsider had ever done that before. Even more surprising was that the fierce Princess Thyra had stood by his side during the dangerous fight. The nobles gathered in the main chamber, whispers and curious glances filling the air. Some admired David's bravery, while others frowned, unwilling to accept a human so close to the royal family. Thyra entered the chamber with regal grace, the flower glowing softly in her hand. Her eyes scanned the crowd, filled with a mix of pride and caution. She knew her choice to let David live and succeed would bring both respect and suspicion. The queen stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. Ambassador Carter has passed the sacred trial. He has shown courage and honor that few outsiders possess. Valoria welcomes his efforts toward peace. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others clearly uneasy. Thyra stood beside David, her presence a silent statement. She no longer saw him as an enemy, but as a partner. After the formal ceremony, the court dispersed, but the palace was alive with talk about the unusual alliance forming between the human and the alien princess. In a quiet moment, Thyra and David stood in the palace gardens. The soft glow of the Luminera flower lit their faces. "You surprised everyone," Thyra said, her voice softer than before. David smiled. "I wanted to show that humans can be more than their past mistakes." Thyra nodded slowly. "Some still doubt you. There are those who want to keep the old hatred alive." David's eyes hardened. "Then we must be stronger. Together." Their growing bond was no secret now. Many in the court watched closely, some with hope, others with fear. That night, as stars twinkled above Valoria, David lay awake, thinking of the challenges ahead. He knew the road to peace would not be easy. But with Thyra's trust, he felt a new strength. Meanwhile, Thyra stared at the Luminera flower, feeling its gentle warmth. For the first time, she believed that peace might be possible, not just between their worlds, but within her own heart. The palace corridors whispered with hidden plots. Not everyone was happy about the growing closeness between Princess Thyra and David Carter. Some powerful nobles saw the human ambassador as a threat to their influence. They feared change and wanted to keep Valoria's old ways, closed off and distrustful of outsiders. One such noble was Lord Varkan, a man known for his cunning and ambition. He watched David carefully, waiting for the right moment to strike. Late one evening, David was summoned to a private meeting in the dim halls of the palace. A stern-faced official accused him of spying, of passing secrets to Earth that could endanger Valoria. David was shocked. The evidence was false, planted to trap him. Word spread quickly. David was arrested and placed under strict guard. His fate seemed grim: exile, or worse, punishment for treason. The court was divided. Some whispered that this was a test to see if Thyra would abandon the human who had won her favor. Thyra's heart raced. She did not believe the charges. David had proven himself time and again. But standing up to the nobles could be dangerous for her too. She knew the court's power games were ruthless. Determined to find the truth, Thyra began her own secret investigation. Under the cover of night, she visited the chambers of those involved, listening to whispered conversations and watching for hidden signs. Slowly, the truth emerged. Lord Varkin and his allies had forged the false evidence, hoping to remove David and keep Valoria's politics unchanged. Thyra faced a choice: ignore the corruption to protect herself, or fight for the man who had risked everything for peace. Her decision was clear. At the next council meeting, Thyra stood boldly before the nobles. She accused Lord Varkin and his faction of conspiracy and treason. The room gasped. Proof was presented, messages and secret meetings revealed. The queen nodded gravely. "We will not tolerate deceit. Justice will be served." David was freed from custody. His reputation restored. He stood beside Thyra, their bond stronger than ever. The political trap had been set to break them, but instead it had brought them closer. Valoria's future was uncertain, but for now, the princess and the human ambassador stood united, ready to face whatever challenges came next. The council chamber was filled with tension as Princess Thyra stood before the gathered nobles. The air was thick with whispered doubts and curious eyes, but she held her head high. At her side stood David Carter, the human ambassador whose fate had been unfairly threatened by lies and deceit. Thyra's voice was steady and clear as she addressed the room. "My people deserve honesty and justice. Today I present evidence that proves Lord Varkin and his allies conspired against Ambassador David. They sought to weaken the peace we strive to build." The nobles murmured, some shocked, others reluctant. The queen sat at her throne, watching carefully as the truth unfolded. Thyra stepped forward, showing the documents and recordings she had gathered in secret. The proof was undeniable. The conspirators had lied and betrayed their own court to keep Valoria divided and weak. Lord Varkin's face turned pale as the nobles began to turn against him. One by one, they demanded justice. The queen rose, her voice strong. "The acts of treason against Valoria will not be tolerated. Lord Varkin and his conspirators will face the consequences of their betrayal." David looked at Thyra with gratitude and admiration. Her courage had saved him and defended the hope for peace between their worlds. As the conspirators were led away, the chamber fell into a quiet calm. The nobles now saw David not as an outsider, but as a respected ally. The change was small, but important. Later, away from the watchful eyes of the court, Thyra and David met in the palace garden. The soft glow of the twin moons bathed the flowers around them. "You risked much for me," David said quietly. "Thank you." Thyra smiled softly. "You showed me what it means to be brave and true. I would do it again." Their hands met, a silent promise of trust and partnership. Though the road ahead was still filled with challenges, the bond between the human and the alien princess had grown unbreakable. Together, they would face whatever the future held, for the sake of Valoria Earth and the hope of a new era. The grand hall was filled with nobles and dignitaries from across Valoria. The air buzzed with excitement and curiosity. Today was the day of the coronation, when Princess Thyra would officially take her place as the new queen. But the gathering had an unexpected twist that left everyone stunned. Thyra stood tall before the crowd, her silver robe shimmering under the bright lights. Her gaze swept over the room, resting briefly on David Carter, who stood beside her with quiet confidence. She could feel the weight of many eyes, some filled with hope, others with doubt. Taking a deep breath, Thyra raised her hand for silence. "Today, as I prepare to accept the crown, I make a choice not only for myself, but for Valoria's future." A hush fell over the room. She looked at David and continued, "I choose David Carter, the human ambassador, to stand with me as my consort. He has shown courage, honor, and a heart that beats for peace between our worlds." Gasps echoed through the hall. Nobles exchanged shocked glances. Some whispered about the boldness of the princess. Others murmured warnings about trusting a human. Lord Varkin's empty seat reminded everyone of the dangers still lurking in the court. David's eyes widened in surprise. He had never imagined such an honor. Yet, seeing the determination in Xyra's eyes, he felt a deep sense of responsibility. He stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am honored to accept this role. Together, we will work for a future where Valoria and Earth stand united." The Queen nodded approvingly, a small smile on her lips. "Let this union be a symbol of hope and strength." The nobles slowly began to applaud, some with hesitation, others with genuine support. The choice was daring, but it promised a new path forward. After the ceremony, Xyra and David walked through the palace gardens, away from the crowd. The soft light of the moon surrounded them as they spoke quietly. "Do you think they will accept this?" David asked. Xyra smiled. "Change is never easy, but if we stand firm, they will see the truth, that peace is stronger than fear." David reached for her hand. "I am ready to face whatever comes by your side." For the first time, Xyra felt a true partner in the journey ahead. Together, they would lead Valoria and Earth into a new era, one built on trust, courage, and hope. The grand hall was alive with celebration. Banners of Valoria fluttered alongside the symbols of Earth, marking a moment no one thought possible. Princess Xyra and David Carter stood side by side on the throne, united as queen and consort. The air was filled with hope, yet beneath the joy was the weight of what they had overcome. David looked out at the gathered crowd, the Valorian nobles, and human diplomats standing together. The road had been long and difficult, filled with hatred, doubt, and danger. But now it seemed a new era was beginning. Xyra's voice rang clear and strong as she addressed her people. "We have faced many challenges. We have seen pain from the past, but today we stand together. Not as enemies, but as allies, as partners." Her eyes met David's, and a soft smile passed between them. "Our union is more than a bond of two souls. It is a promise to our worlds. A promise that peace and understanding will guide us." The crowd erupted in applause, many cheering for the future, others quietly hopeful. But beyond the cheers, Xyra knew the work had only just begun. There were still those who clung to old fears and grudges. The court would test them, and the galaxy's dangers loomed large. David stepped forward. "Together, we will face every challenge. Earth and Valoria are stronger united. We will build bridges where walls once stood." As they took their seats on the throne, a new light filled the room, not just from the crystals and stars, but from the hope that peace could grow in even the darkest places. In the days that followed, Xyra and David worked side by side. They listened to their peoples, healed wounds, and forged new alliances. Their partnership inspired others, showing that trust and courage could overcome even centuries of distrust. At night, when the palace was quiet, Xyra often looked at David and felt grateful. What once was hate had become respect and love. Together, they were not just rulers. They were symbols of a future where different worlds could find common ground. The galaxy watched as the human consort and alien queen led Valoria into a brighter tomorrow. Their story became a legend, a reminder that even the deepest divides can be bridged by courage, understanding, and hope.